Social Development has been contacted by Alberta Health Services requesting a meeting with the municipality of Cold Lake to share our current operating procedures and documents as it pertains to hotel isolation, as our program in Grande Prairie has been identified as a success. The Youth Advisory Council held their first meeting on December 19th with 9 members in attendance, and the next meeting is scheduled for January 30th. In enforcement services, officers have been spending a significant amount of time trying to clear abandoned vehicles and obstructions on the roadways to assist with the expediting snow removal operations. 2 officers, Christy Pilger and Philip LeBlanc, both successfully completed their peace officer induction training with the province of Alberta. And positive story to report is one of the peace officers, Peace Officer Taylor, was called to attend a vehicle blocking the road at 93 Street and 103 Avenue. When the officer arrived, the vehicle was abandoned, and the officer tried to contact the registered owner to determine what was happening, as the vehicle was stuck in the drive lane. In that conversation, he learned that the driver had to depart to pick up her disabled 3-year-old son from downtown, and that they didn't have money, and that the vehicle had ran out of gas. As such, the officer was able to make contact with Harold's Towing, explain the situation to them. They picked up some gas in a jerry can on behalf of the officer. The officer paid for the gas and arranged for another peace officer to pick up the citizen who was walking to pick up her child. That officer then picked up the child and the lady and brought them back to their vehicle and sent them on their way. So good work by those guys to provide some service to somebody that needed it. At GPREP, the Mobile Emergency Coordination Center, which is a capital project we had underway last year, did a test run, and a few issues were identified that we're looking to address right now. But once complete, the Mobile Emergency Coordination Center is going to allow us to maintain the supplies and resources necessary to establish an emergency coordination center at any location within our region that we need to do so. So it's going to be a positive addition to our fleet. In the fire department, due to a spike in numbers of infections in the area and within the fire department at times, we've reactivated our high-risk level of COVID-19 policy that strives to reduce the risk of exposure and to provide continuity to our fire services. Within the RCMP in Alberta have launched a new mobile app. The app is an easy-to-use platform that allows communities to acquire information, statistics, crime mapping, and info about initiatives that are underway, such as Project Lockup, which is a new initiative they are doing at the moment. The intent is to, create better access, remove barriers to people accessing police information. It's available for download via the Apple Store or Android Play Store. Additionally, the RCMP wanted to report that over the holiday season, the RCMP Detachment, Municipal Traffic Unit, Provincial Integrated Traffic, and members of the Rural Section conducted a variety of traffic enforcement initiatives throughout the month, promoting traffic safety, particularly in regard to impaired driving. Over that time, they reported 628 violation tickets, which included 43 impaired drivers being removed from the road. In addition, 8 novice drivers were given roadside sanctions regarding alcohol consumption, and 7 24-hour suspensions were also issued. So the RCMP say they're committed to community safety and will continue to conduct similar initiatives throughout the year. And that's the highlights of the report this week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. And my kudos to the officers that helped that lady out. It's been cold weather here lately, and I got nothing but praise for them, both of them. Thank you. Going on, I've got Mayor Clayton in queue to ask questions.
Thanks for that, Chair O'Toole. Director Manuel, can you tell me, you mentioned that 30 people will be in the coordinated care campus shortly. When is the expectation to see more people than that? You know, the facility, as Council knows, is significantly larger than that. And also, can you give me an update on the exterior work? When will we expect to see the more permanent fence around the facility?
Thank you for the question. So phasing within the project is in accordance with our established timelines right now. So we are still progressing through phase one, and phase one will be the phase that we progress into, which is essentially occupying the first floor wing, the initial 40 rooms of the coordinated care campus. Phase two, which involves the second floor, will begin occupying in April, is when that will occur. We are being pretty methodical with ensuring that the appropriate renovation, staffing complements, programming, licensing, all of those things are in place ahead of fully occupying the building. And at each phase, there's an evaluation being conducted to ensure we're ready to move to the next phase. Just because we have the building, we had expressed to the community and remain committed to that we will be diligent in how we phase the occupancy and programming. In regard to the exterior, the only exterior improvement that's going to occur in January will be the fencing piece, which will be the wrought iron fencing through the parking areas. The additional exterior improvements will all occur once we are past our winter weather, once we're into the spring.
Great, thank you.
The next significant phase with the project right now is the development of the commercial space for the city departments relocating there this spring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. I'm going to ask one more time if there's any questions from council members. And I see none. So you're off the hook now. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to 3.2, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, calls to action. We've got Miss Angela Sutherland here. Good afternoon, Angela.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am here to report back to committee with a list of the TRC calls to action that are most relevant to municipalities, along with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, the TRC, was created through a legal settlement between residential school survivors, Assembly of First Nations, Inuit representatives, and the parties responsible for creation and operation of the schools, the federal government, and church bodies. So the TRC's mandate was to inform all Canadians about the history of residential schools. It documented the truth of survivors, their families, communities, and anyone personally affected by the residential school experience. So this included many people, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, former residential school students, families, communities, churches, and it goes on. The TRC released its final report on December 15th, and it was comprised of 6 volumes and included a summary of 94 calls to action. Administration has looked at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as a reference point. They reviewed the report and have identified 9 of these calls to action as being most relevant to municipalities. According to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, they refer to reconciliation in a simplistic form as an ongoing process of establishing and maintaining respectful relationships. So a critical part of this process really involves following through with concrete actions that demonstrate real societal change and understanding of the relationships and the impact that residential schools have had on our Indigenous peoples and communities moving forward. As per the FCM, the 9 actions that I've highlighted here in the report, I'll just briefly highlight a few of them. Action 40 talks about all levels of government in collaboration with Indigenous people is to create funding that are specific to victim programs and services with appropriate evaluation mechanisms. Action 43 speaks to fully adopting and implementing reconciliation frameworks based on the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Action 47 speaks to land. Action 57 speaks to education to public servants on the history of Indigenous people, residential schools, and it speaks to intercultural competency, anti-racism, human rights, and conflict resolution. Action 64 speaks to denominational schools and speaking about truth and reconciliation as a part of their studies. Action 75 speaks to provision of appropriate memorial ceremonies and commemorative markers to honor deceased children from residential schools. Action 77 talks about archives and collecting copies of records relevant to history and legacy of the residential school system. Action 87 talks about recognizing in collaboration with Aboriginal peoples to provide education that tells the story of Aboriginal athletes in history. And Action 88 talks about sport development, continued support for North American Indigenous Games, and funding to host games for provincial and territorial team preparation and travel. So the City of Grande Prairie has made positive progress on the TRC's calls to action relevant to support reconciliation of Indigenous peoples. So some of the highlights have included in the report include Orange Shirt Day. So I know many of you are familiar with this. The city has been supporting Orange Shirt Day since 2016. And it really is about bringing ongoing awareness and recognition to the impacts caused by residential schools. The city has implemented a smudging protocol.
So I think we may have lost Angela there quickly, but I can jump in and help her out. So with the calls to action, you saw the municipal response so far. I think we left with smudging protocols. So we've also incorporated the tobacco offering protocol for city staff, land acknowledgements for Grande Prairie and area, a blanket exercise with council and some of administration, Indigenous engagement for coordinated access, equity, diversity, and inclusion initiative, which corporate leadership has endorsed. And with the initiative, its extensive facilitated training is now being rolled out to all city staff, and many members of city council participated. We've also done some pretty extensive consultations in regard to the coordinated care campus. And city council recently endorsed funding in the budget 2022 for an Indigenous liaison position. I think, Angela, are you back with us now?
Yes. So sorry about that.
I'll let you finish it off.
Okay. So, continued. I think I heard Director Manuel speak to the, we talked about the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Initiative, the consultations for the Coordinated Care Campus. We're very excited about. There's work underway to design cultural supports that reflect traditional healing at the site. And we're looking at, of course, adopting and including Indigenous representation on our advisory committee. And I think he spoke to the Indigenous liaison position, which is a key part of advancing reconciliation. So the City of Grande Prairie has committed to taking these steps to honor the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. We know that strengthening the relationships with the Indigenous community will further build a pathway to reconciliation. That is a responsibility of all levels of government. So in terms of the calls to action, I know that there is another document through EMA as well that highlights a few of the actions. Having said that, the City of Grande Prairie has made some advancements on addressing reconciliation in the space of learning, listening, consulting, and collaboration. I know across the organization, there has been many opportunities. However, there's still many opportunities to further address these calls to action. Having a dedicated Indigenous liaison is an important step in building a reconciliation framework and improving communication, relationships, and opportunities between the City of Grande Prairie and the Indigenous community. So that concludes the report. I apologize for the hiccup there in service, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Hey, you did a fantastic job. Thanks very much. I know I got kicked off about 9 times today, so you only being kicked off once, that's pretty good. I'm going to ask everybody here in council if there's any questions or concerns with the report. I'm looking around, and I think you did an amazing job. Oh, I've got Chris Thiessen online, so go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman Kevin O'Toole. Thanks for the report, Ms. Sutherland, and the team effort, Director Manuel. I appreciate that you guys could bounce off each other to deliver that report for us. It's very important, not just to the city, but to a bunch of residents in our community. Now, I guess my question is, and I think I brought it up when this motion was originally made, and is one of the first calls to action I thought that the City of Grande Prairie could answer as a member of all levels of government, and that was Jordan's Principle. Ms. Sutherland, Jordan's Principle ensures that First Nations children have the right to access all public services without worrying about the cost and who's going to take that on. Has administration done any investigation as to how we might be able to implement that as one of our Truth and Reconciliation calls to action?
Ms. Sutherland?
Through the chair. Thanks for the question. So we haven't had an opportunity yet to really dive deep into the opportunities there where we can review municipal discrimination. So I think we've been talking a lot about how we can remove barriers to our services. So that's one of the, I think, one of the things that we can move forward on through that avenue. And I think that another opportunity that municipalities have is to really support our partners in healthcare, social, and educational systems to really bring to light about how systemic and institutional practices may limit Indigenous youth from accessing services that they need. I hope that answered your question.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Here, I just Googled it. Google it, go figure. Jordan's Principle is a child's first and needs-based principle used in public policy and administration in Canada to ensure that First Nations children living on and off reserve have equitable access to all government-funded public services. It holds that First Nations children should not be denied access to public services while governments fight over who should pay. In order to ensure substantive equality, this can also include services that are not ordinarily available to other children. So So I think, yeah, we could do a lot of barrier breaking through this, but I don't know too many municipalities through my research that have actually incorporated this principle, and perhaps they're just looking to the higher levels of government as there is an expense associated with it. But I think this would be very valuable and a feather in the cap, so to speak, of the city of Grande Prairie and our relationship with our FNMI community. And the peoples that are represented to going a long way to showing that we don't just have our best foot forward, we act as well. And Jordan's principle, I think, is one of those measurable acts that we could undertake. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Councillor Thiessen. I'm just going to ask again if there's any other questions. And with that, I see none. I'm looking for the recommendation from administration. The committee accept this report for information. So, Councillor Bressie, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, I am happy to make that motion to accept for information. Just want to say thank you to Ms. Sutherland and whoever else was involved in this. It really was just an informational thing that I was hoping to get out of this, because as we're heading into strategic priorities planning, I've heard from all members of council, I think that that somewhere this truth and reconciliation probably fits into our priorities, whether it becomes a specific pillar or not. I think that this is something that all of us have shared ideas on. So I think this will be a good foundational document to refer to as we have those future conversations. So I don't think action's needed today, but I think that this report's going to be very useful for future action. So just thank you to Min for putting it together.
Okay. And with that, I'll call for a vote. And there we go. And that carries unanimously. And I will just let you know that I'm going to copy that report and keep it in my briefcase, because there's some good reading there. And thank you for the report. With that, we will move on to correspondence. We have none. We have no other business. We have no bylaw or policy review at this time. And the outstanding items list is nothing on the list at this time. And there is one, sorry.
No, there's lots, yeah.
Didn't want to take a job away from you, Mr. Manley. Go ahead, sir.
Goodness. You're awesome, Kev.
You know, I'd let you take out the list there, Mr. Chairman, but some of these are pretty important. So I can report that they're all on track, and that item 1168, Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, I believe has been met today. So I ask that committee remove that from the list.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking for someone to make a motion to accept the outstanding.
I'll make that motion.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll move that committee accept the outstanding items list as amended.
That motion's in order. Call for the vote. And that carries unanimously. I want to thank you all for being accepting of the late meeting today. I know it kind of messes up your day, but we had a very busy day. And with that, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Chair O'Toole. Thanks, everyone. Stay glorious.